Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Culture and Coffee podcast for Monday, the 10th of July, 2023. Surprising myself here how chipper I feel. First thing this Monday morning. What time is it here? 6:20 in the morning, and all is quiet. So yes, today I'm going to be talking about, or giving you some insights for you to be able to spot what kind of culture you have right now, like literally right now, as you are in work, if you're listening to this in work, on your way, just so you get a sense of where you are and where you're at. And I think it's really important that you're able to do that. It's that whole thing of knowing how you feel. If you're aware of how you feel, you can do something about it. And it's the same with your culture. If you know what kind of culture you've got, you can do something about it or not. And if you choose not to, well, don't moan. Plain and simple, save the moans for home. This week's coffee is an Ethiopian conga from Puzzle Coffee. Now, Puzzle Coffee they're opposite the town hall in Melbourne, for those of you who've ever been here. For those of you who've not, you should come here. It's going to be unseasonably warm this year, global warming. You shouldn't be happy about that, really, global warming, but it's been a bit chilly here recently, so I'm kind of looking forward to it. That's a terrible thing to say, isn't it? My kids will be like, Dad, it's safeguarding the planet. I'm like, listen, I just want to be a little warmer than I have been. That's all. Not 5 degrees warmer, just a few degrees would be good. Classic poem. There I go with my weather again. I can't help it. So it's in the centre of Melbourne. Great little place. There was an article about, it was included in an article about Melbourne coffee in the Financial Times when I was in the UK in March. There was a whole piece in the FT in London about Melbourne and coffee. And so there's a list of 5 places that they had, and I've done, this will be the second of the 5 that I've done on the podcast, and so I've got the other 3 still to do. So yes, it's another Ethiopian coffee from Puzzle. Now, the great thing about Puzzle Coffee, let's have a look at the back here. So it's www.puzzle.coffee. They donate 1 tree for every coffee bag sold. So bought a couple of bags. Why not? So I'm looking forward to trying this Ethiopian conga. So let me just do that right here. So it says it's got notes of pear, lemonade, peanut butter and blackberry, which that's a lot going on. And definitely getting lemonade and the pear, not so much the peanut butter and the blackberry. Although I have to be honest, I've made a pretty bad coffee here. Now, it happens every now and again. It's got nothing to do with Puzzle Coffee, let me just say this. So I use a filter machine. Name escapes me right now, but it's orange, and I've put too much water in this. I've definitely put too much water in it. Have you ever had the coffee and it just tastes a bit weak, right? And that's nothing to do with the coffee, and it's everything to do with the way that it's made. It really. Although I hope you're not one of those awkward people. I'll have a triple shot, extra hot. I want it to burn my mouth so badly. It's not that. I've just made a really bad coffee. So I'm getting all of those. I'm getting a couple of, definitely getting the pear and the lemonade. In fact, that's really nice. It's just not strong enough, and that's my fault. Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, like, I love listening to Culture Coffee podcast. Is every coffee you drink a good one? It's like, well, no, it's not. But half the time, it's down to the way it's made. It's usually got nothing to do with the coffee itself. It's a complex drink to make, and then once it's in our hands, it's relatively simple. And I was talking to a friend in New Zealand recently, and we were talking about the fact that, like, the coffee culture in Melbourne and New Zealand is if you make a bad coffee, people will not go to your cafe. Like, it's plain and simple. Like, if you might do the best. What's the thing in New Zealand? Oh, cheese scones, not scones, people. Cheese scones. They love a cheese scone in New Zealand. And we were saying you could do the best cheese scone in the world, but if you do a bad coffee, you ain't getting any business. You've got to do good coffee. Anyway, enough of that. That's the coffee today. It's an Ethiopian conga from Puzzle Coffee in Melbourne. So let's talk about how to spot the kind of culture you have. So there are two key variables to any culture, and they are emotional intelligence and engagement. So just very, very briefly on those two variables. Emotional intelligence essentially is the capacity to be aware of, manage, control how you feel, and the ability you have to then use that knowledge to build relationships with other people. Like, some people's emotional intelligence sucks, but some people are highly emotionally intelligent. Like, when I said that about some people's emotional intelligence sucks, like, there's someone who immediately leapt into your mind. You're like, yeah, I know the guy you're talking about. I know him well, and I have to work with him every day, and he sucks the life out of me. My friend Warwick called them oxygen thieves. So emotional intelligence, and I've talked about emotional intelligence in the past. It's the thing that we've downplayed the role of it for far too long in our cultures. Now, I'm a pretty, those of you who listen to the podcast, you probably know this. If it's the first time you've listened to the podcast, here's what you can expect. I'm a pretty no-nonsense kind of guy, right? I like to call things as they are. One of the things that really irks me is when people try and overcomplicate messages about culture. There's this sense that, everybody has to be as clever as me to really understand this complex thing called culture. There are people in 0-hour contract jobs who live and breathe culture every day. You don't have to make it complicated. What people want is a sense of understanding. And then what they want is, what can you give me to either help me understand my situation or to help me do something about it? And the whole point of these podcasts, to be honest, born out of a few conversations that I've had over the years where people are like, listen, I just love one thing every other week. Just give me something every other week, either, stretch my knowledge or give me something that I can use. And emotional intelligence is the same. Whenever I do personality profiles, which I do as part of my culture programs and the work that I do to give people that sense of self-awareness, is one of the things that used to bug me was the way that they were taught. Now, and I understand that the background to these things is crucially important. I understand, but do we really have to go back to all these kind of Aristotles and I know I used Aristotle recently, but like the history of everything and the brain, like people just want to know, how do I use this profile to figure out whether I'm a dickhead or not? Like, at its base level, that's what they want to know. How can I use this information so that my kids like me more or my partner likes me more? And so I think emotional intelligence is a, fundamentally what we're talking about is how do you give people a knowledge of who they are? So it's a way of us better understanding ourselves. And emotional intelligence can be a blessing and a curse, in the sense that what emotional intelligence is that ability to be able to understand yourself. How do I feel at any one time? And then what can I do with that knowledge, essentially? And so you'll know it, when you're having a good day, you feel like you're able to bring the best self to work, whatever it is for you. And again, I've got a session with some engineers coming up, and for them, it's like, I enjoy my work. I know I have to do, a certain amount of social interactions, but I really want to focus on my own thing, but also recognize I've got a contribution to make as the team, and that's easy to do. And, that's that kind of self-awareness, is that knowledge that, for engineers particularly who like working on their own, is, well, I've got this job to do on my own, but I have to work with others on these other things. And that's, kind of, it's basic level, that's emotional intelligence in action, is knowing that when I'm feeling a bit cross, but not letting it come out of my mouth or not writing it down in an email. Emotional intelligence is, kind of helping to coach somebody else who might need that help. So that's the first element of culture, that self-awareness, that knowledge of self. and the ability to bring that best self to work, essentially. Whatever work it is you do, if you're a sports player, if you're a train driver, whatever it is. The second element is engagement. And both of these are as important as each other. And by engagement, what we mean is how much do you care? How much do you care about your job? How much do you care about the people around you? How much do you care about the contribution you make to the organisation? How much do you care about the organisation? How much do you care about its vision, its strategy? How much do you care? That's what we mean by engagement. Now, not everyone can be 100% engaged all of the time. Just in the same way that not everyone can be 100% emotional intelligent all the time. There's no perfect person working for a perfect company. But you've got to be doing your best every day, right? So engagement really for me, organizations generally can't do much about somebody's attitude. I'll come back to that shortly. They can influence it, but you can't. I can't tell you what kind of attitude to have. I mean, you've got a good attitude because you listen to the podcast, because you're stretching yourself, you want to take on more knowledge, and that's good, right? But it's only as good as what you do with it. If you take this knowledge and go, oh, listen to Colin talking about this morning. Right, so what that means for my job is, and at that point you're engaged. The emotional intelligence piece is you listening to the podcast. You might even be making notes. I had someone who's like, oh, I make notes every week, and that's great, right? But it's only great if you do something with it. And at that point you're engaged. I had one person say to me, I love your podcast. It's motivated me to get a new job. I'm like, good, I think. And they were like, oh, I just realised the place that I was working, I just don't enjoy it, and I don't like what they stand for. I'm like, well, that's cool. That's good, because you can never be 100% engaged if you don't like the organisation you work with. But it's not as easy. I want to make the point. It's not as easy as if you're not engaged to go, right, let's get another job. Right? It's just not that easy to do. And I think there's a flippancy sometimes with some thought leaders. If you don't like it, get another job. Or if you're not happy, get another job. It's like, yeah. Really not that easy. Not that easy if you desperately need the money, you don't want to take the risk, you quite like the people but you don't like the job, all of those kind of things, right? So, but engagement is crucially important. And when you're highly engaged, that's when you're highly motivated. When you've got no low engagement, it's low motivation. So I always say, it doesn't matter how emotionally intelligent you are. If you're highly engaged, you'll still get some stuff done, right? But if you're not engaged, you won't get anything done. And this is procrastination right here. Is you can work in a nice, it can be a nice place to work, but if there's no engagement, you ain't getting anything done. So engagement is crucially important, and this is the bit that organizations can influence by making sure they have a good vision, strong values. They treat people the same way. I wrote over the weekend and got to get the manuscript done in the next 7 weeks. And I wrote over the weekend about, there's a story about some UK companies who didn't pay their people properly. And they come out with all the excuses. Oh, we didn't realise. Oh, really? You didn't realise? Oh, I bet you realised when you were spending capital funds, though. But because this is wages, you didn't realise. Like, that kind of thing kills engagement. When you have a senior leader who behaves really poorly, when you feel like there's one rule for them and one rule for everybody else, you know what I mean? When I spoke to one person a few weeks back who really wanted to do a program, but their company had pulled all discretionary spend, but only for the things that they wanted to do, not for the things that other people wanted to do. Like, that kills engagement, right? So these two factors, emotional intelligence and engagement, they factor in what kind of culture you have right now. And what you have to identify is, well, what's the thing that's causing the culture to be as it is? So, when you've got, let me talk through, there are 4 kinds of cultures, right? And culture's a feeling. Right, so it's a feeling. So it's kind of like, well, how does it feel right now? So often I do this exercise where, as my culture workshops, and say, well, what does it feel like for you right now? And you could be working on the same team as someone else. You could both feel different ways for whatever reason. So when you have low engagement, right? So when there isn't much to care about, and low emotional intelligence, so people aren't either aren't able to be the best version of themselves or aren't being the best version of themselves. You have what we call a stagnant culture. And in stagnant cultures, just nothing happens, right? There's where work goes to die in a stagnant culture. There's little interaction between staff, and what interaction there is done by email, and no one ever responds to the emails or messages or phone calls. You have people who are largely unapproachable, who almost don't want to interact with each other. That's how little they care. There's a real aversion to change. So people will you'll see engagement lift slightly when someone doesn't want to do something. Do you know what I mean? It's like they unite around the things they don't want to do rather than the things that do need to get done. And you have this real, what I call hero mentality. This is my job. I'm not telling you how to do my job. Let me do my job on my own. I'm not talking about empowerment. I'm just talking about people who won't share information with each other, and they're kind of protecting their job until they retire. That's how it seems anyway. And often you get that in stagnant culture. I always say when I work with organizations who've got lots of long-serving employees, in fact, I joked about this at the start of the year, is the culture's either really great or really bad. Like, it's really great in the sense that people are loyal, they love it, it's a place that they want to be, and they love the interactions with it. Or they just can't get paid the same amount of money anywhere else, and they just refuse to leave. They refuse to leave. And then organizations do the worst thing. They do restructures and operating model changes to try and get rid of those people, and they never leave. Things are so bad that they desperately want to stay. They've got, in stagnant cultures, there's a real sense of, well, whatever you're suggesting isn't going to work, and we're not going to engage with it to find out whether it does or not. They're the worst. Stagnant cultures are the worst. They really, really are. And everyone, with all four of these cultures, you'll have worked in one of them at some stage. And I think, for me, stagnant cultures are the worst because you're bored. Either you're bored of what's not getting done, or there isn't enough for you to do. So often with stagnant cultures, this is where they'll employ a team of 20 people and there's only enough work for 5 people. And the culture stagnates, and why am I here? Why did they hire me? Why am I just sat here doing nothing? Stagnant cultures, I don't recall in my career working in too many stagnant cultures, I have to say. Even when there hasn't been enough work, we were engaged enough to know when work was coming in, and we had a good sense of camaraderie, I think, anyway. Stagnant cultures. When engagement is low but emotional intelligence high, you get what we call a pleasant culture. And these are very nice cultures. We don't want to upset anybody, right? And that's good. There's high in emotional intelligence. We want people to be good humans. We really, really do. We want people to feel able to bring their best self to work. But with pleasant cultures, it's kind of superficial. They're projecting this concept of happiness. And there's loads of good intent. But stuff's just not getting done. Like, it's just not getting, work isn't getting done, decisions aren't getting made, people aren't working on the right things. Everyone's got a different set of priorities. I always find weird in pleasant cultures. There's just no sense of, come on, let's get this done. There's lots of blind optimism. We can do it. Oh, what you get in pleasant cultures is lots of people saying yes to lots of things that they then can't do. And then they get themselves in a right old tears, going, well, I can't do this. Then why do you say yes to it? Well, you've got to, haven't you? No. If you're highly engaged, you definitely don't, because you're like, I don't have capacity to do that. I've got capacity for these 3 things. Well, they're all important. Well, that's great, but I've only got capacity for 3. Which 3 do you want me to do? So in pleasant cultures, we take on more work, and the narrative here is, we'll do it, but it's going to be hard to do. In other words, we'll do it, but I'm going to have to kill myself to do it. That's how much work's involved. So there's lots of harmony, lots of people copied into stuff, which is just ridiculous practice. Like if you do one thing today, it's stop copying people into emails. Just stop it. 2 reasons for copying people into emails, and to cover your arse or to show people how smart you are. So stop doing it. But there's lots of that. Lots of people and loads of people invited. So everyone gets invited to every meeting, right? I think with pleasant, well, the great thing about pleasant cultures is you do a little bit of, mixing socially. You'll catch up for coffee, but then you'll use it as an excuse to moan and call people behind their back, do some gossip. Ultimately, what I'd say about pleasant cultures is there's a foundation there. With stagnant cultures, they're very, very difficult to turn around. A stagnant culture, something that's fundamentally broken. And usually, I think with a stagnant culture, because someone in authority has presided over it, for want of a better word. So somebody generally will have to go before you can fix it. And it doesn't always have to be a person at the top. I worked with one stagnant culture, and there was one particular guy, and he wasn't that old. It's very easy to say, oh, some old guy. And this guy wasn't. He was like in his mid to late 30s. And he was just, he wasn't toxic. He was quite smart in the way that he did it. And, I joked with him. I was like, if you used it, the situation we found ourselves in wasn't funny because he was holding stuff back. But I said the irony is, if you use this energy for good, you could change the way that this culture is, but you can't be bothered. But pleasant culture is a bit of a foundation there, because I think people generally want to do the right thing, but there's some new habits that need to form. So they're all kind of low engagement, stagnant cultures, pleasant cultures, low engagement, and on opposite sides really of the emotional intelligence spectrum. When you've got engagement, that's where work happens. But when you have a low emotional intelligence of the people in highly engaged cultures, you get a combatant culture. Everything's a fight. Everything's a battle. Everything. You feel like this is when you don't want to get out of bed, right? There's a couple of times when you don't want to get out of bed. Combatant cultures and toxic cultures. I'll talk about this in a second, because there are certain people in the organization whose behaviors are making work hard to do. And that should never happen, right? But they are. So in combatant cultures, because we're highly engaged, we understand why the work is important. We do. But what we do is we use friction as a motivator. So what I mean by that is there's a bit of shouting. There's a bit of raised voices. There's a bit of swearing sometimes. There's people who using power and authority. It's my response. You ask me. If you want to do that, you ask me first. Like stuff like that, right? So there's this real people using people's names. Well, let's see, John has said if he doesn't get it by 5, there's going to be trouble. That kind of stuff. There's a story about that in the media at the weekend. Someone who's really displaying, and not necessarily toxic, right, behaviors, just rude, really. Civility, that's what I was reading at the weekend. The concept of being civil, having manners. And I talk about the fact that you've got different people with different personalities, and you've got a certain group of people who've got very direct personalities, right? And so they don't say please and they don't say thank you. But that doesn't make them bad people. They just don't do that thing. You've got people who do that all the time. They'll say sorry for breathing. But people who are direct, they're not. It just feels rude to people who aren't like them. But they're not. They just don't use please and thank yous. But there's an edge. In combatant cultures, there's a real edge to people. And it is borderline toxic. Now, when you stay in a combatant culture too long, it turns toxic. Right? So combatant cultures is where we normalize low emotional intelligence. Right? So this is where low emotional intelligence becomes bad behavior, and it becomes normalized. And what happens is people see senior managers doing it and feel that they can do it too. And that's when it turns toxic. And I've talked about toxic cultures in previous episodes of the podcast. But, and as I've been reading, toxic cultures kill people. Like, it's really bad. You look at the suicide rates, and then you look at like some of the reasons. It's toxic cultures kill people. And organizations simply don't do enough to deal with them quickly. They bury their head in the sand. They see it as a reputational thing. They feel like they'll lose market share, rather than thinking at a real human level is, how can we make the conditions better for human beings who are being paid to come here every single day? And so you've got to be really, really, when the culture is combating. And I literally got an email from a guy this morning. I haven't read it. I don't like to start my day by reading emails, but it was just like when I turned my laptop on, the email client was open, and I just had I clicked on the email, and it was an approach from someone, and they were saying, "Oh, I've read your book Culture Fix, and I think we've got a combatant culture, and the right thing to do is to do something about it right now, because if you stay there too long, it becomes combatant." So how do you know if you're combatant? Everything's priority one. Everything. You're always busy, and busy is a badge. I went 60 hours this week. Well done you. Well done. You're rubbish at managing your time. So combatant cultures, but you get the work done. You get it done in a way that's draining. And where you want to be, of course, is vibrant. Vibrant cultures occur when people really care about. I have to really think about the way that I say the word care. I can't say it in my Northern English way. Care, cats purr, people care. Really care about the organisation, what it's trying to do, the targets that you've got. They really believe in it. There's a sense of, we can do this. And they bring their best self to work. Their attitude is great. Their energy is good. They're putting themselves to bed at the right time. They've got a good lifestyle. There's a good mix of things. They've got other stuff going on in their lives. And whatever drives you, whatever it is that drives you, there's that real sense of, come on, when we're together, we can do it. Vibrant cultures are great. They are so good. Because when you get up in the morning, you want to go to work. Like, listen, I'm an optimistic realist. You'd still rather be on holiday somewhere in the sun, right? But you want to go to work. There's this sense of, we can do it. There's a target and you want to hit it, and you want to figure out how you're going to do it. Or there's some form of goal, or there's a vision that you want to achieve. And you celebrate the success, like along the way, you're like, yeah, let's celebrate. Because you see success as come on, we can do this, as a motivator. Your real sense of anything is possible. When we work together, anything is possible. And I was talking in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago about hybrid cultures. And someone was describing their hybrid culture, and it was very pleasant. And because what you've got is it was a mix of pleasant and combatant, because you've got people who are like, oh, we really want to make this work, and that's good. But then there was a selfishness of like, but I only want it to work in the way that I want it. I only want it to work for me. It's got to suit my hours. And I used the story of a hybrid work culture that I'm working with, where people are like, we'll do what it takes to make this a success. It's got nothing to do with what I need. It's got what I want. It's got everything to do with what the team needs. So they've got this real positivity. They've got this real balance within this hybrid way of working, because they're not thinking about themselves. I don't want to come in on a Monday. There's like none of that. It's like, what do we need to do to be successful as a team? And if that means coming into the office 5 days to do, these kind of brainstorming workshops, then that's what we'll do. If we need to be together in the same place, that's what we'll do. There's continual improvement. People constantly pushing each other forward. At no sense does work kind of grind to a halt. There's always a decision to be made. But they do take time out. They take time out to socialize. They take time out to go, right, well, let's stop, take a breath. Like these cultures, what happens in vibrant culture, people make time for lunch, right? And sometimes they'll take it together because they enjoy that. And that's great. I had one guy say to me, do I have to enjoy having lunch with my teammates? I'm like, you have to see it as something that you need to do to maintain a vibrant culture. And he was like, okay, I get it. It's not something I normally do, but I was like, yeah, this is what vibrant cultures do. And the thing is with vibrant cultures is everybody wins. And winning is a good thing. Like winning at all costs is a bad thing. Winning at all costs is a sign of a combatant culture, right? This is where you make the goal more important than the individual. Whereas winning in the way that it should be, winning in the right way is playing within the rules, you know, and as much as it pains me for cricket fans out there, you know, there was a whole kind of, it was in the media and every front page of the media. I mean, that's how bad we are with our cricket, because somebody got out in a way that isn't normal. Everyone was up in arms, an England player, but it was within the rules. And you know, when it comes to cricket, Australia knows how to win. God, stuck in my throat, that one. But Australia does, it knows how to win. Like New Zealand All Blacks, they know how to win, but they win within the rules, right? And this is what vibrant cultures do. So, the other thing about vibrant cultures, no tolerance of brilliant jerks. They don't allow individuals to hold them back. They recognise that the whole is bigger than the parts, right? But everyone's got to do their bit. So they're the four cultures, all right? So stagnant, pleasant, combatant, vibrant. And for my upcoming book, so Detox Your Culture, which I'm writing right now for Bloomsbury in the UK. I'm pleased to say that's all been signed. So thank you to the guys at Bloomsbury in the UK. That'll be launched at some stage in 2024. So I'm running a poll on LinkedIn, and I'd be really grateful if you wouldn't mind just jumping onto LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, searching for me, just search, I don't know, Colin Ellis Culture, if we're not connected, Colin D. Ellis Culture. And there's a short poll. I'm interested if you've ever worked in a toxic culture, right? Simple question. Have you ever worked in a toxic culture? Yes or no? So I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you're listening to it once you get to the office, like, don't try and do it while you're driving. Definitely not. But if you wouldn't mind just jumping on and answering the poll and getting your teammates to answer it too, I'd be grateful. What I want to do, it's anonymous, right? But what I want to do is to be able to use it in the book to say, you know, I want to be able to say, you know, this is how bad things are, you know, and currently 96%, I think about 150 people have responded so far. We put it live yesterday and 96% of people have worked in a toxic culture. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, I'd be grateful. Thank you so much for listening to the Culture and Coffee podcast. I hope you have a great day wherever you are. Ta-ra for now.